The Netherlands didn't just build an island. They built an entire province from the bottom of the sea. 374 square miles of land reclaimed from the ocean. Today, hundreds of thousands of people live there. This is the story of the world's largest artificial island.
When you think of artificial islands, you might picture small sandy resorts. But the Netherlands took the concept to an entirely different level by building the Flevopolder, which holds the title of the world's largest artificial island, covering an astounding 374 square miles. It wasn't built for luxury tourism. It was built for survival and expansion. The Dutch reclaimed this massive expanse of land from the Zuiderzee, a shallow inland sea, using a complex system of dikes, dams and massive pumps. Officially established as part of the province of Flevoland in 1986, alongside the mainland-connected Noordoostpolder, the Flevopolder represents a marvel of modern engineering and water management. Today, it's home to hundreds of thousands of residents, bustling cities like Almere and Lelystad, thriving agricultural lands, and even a nature reserve. It stands as a monumental testament to the famous saying, "God created the earth, but the Dutch created the Netherlands." Long before modern engineers used massive dredging ships, the ancient Aztecs were master island builders. In the 14th century, they founded their capital city, Tenochtitlan, on a small natural island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. To accommodate a rapidly booming population, they expanded the island outward using an ingenious agricultural system called Times Chinampas. The Aztecs constructed rectangular enclosures in the shallow lake bed using wattle and filled them with mud and decaying vegetation. These floating gardens eventually rooted to the lake floor, creating highly fertile, stable artificial land. At its height, Tenochtitlan was one of the largest and most advanced cities in the world, connected to the mainland by massive causeways. Today, the remnants of this incredible engineering feat lie buried beneath modern-day Mexico City, a sprawling metropolis whose foundations were literally built by hand on an artificial lake island. Dubai's Palm Jumeirah is perhaps the most famous artificial island in the modern world, recognized instantly from space by its distinctive palm tree shape. But the sheer scale of the materials used to build this luxury haven is even more mind-boggling than its design. Engineers bypassed traditional concrete and steel, opting instead to build the island entirely from natural materials to blend with the surrounding environment. They dredged roughly 94 million cubic meters of sand from the bottom of the Persian Gulf and quarried 7 million tons of rock from the Hajar Mountains to form the protective breakwater. To put that massive volume into perspective, if you were to take all of the sand and rock used to build Palm Jumeirah and construct a wall measuring 2 meters high and half a meter thick, that wall wouldn't just stretch around the Earth's equator, once it would circle the globe 3 times over. In the 1980s, the Japanese city of Osaka desperately needed a new airport, but mountainous terrain and dense population left zero available land. The bold solution: build an entirely new island in the middle of Osaka Bay. Kansai International Airport opened in 1994, standing as a triumph of civil engineering. However, the victory came with a massive ongoing catch: the island can't stop sinking. Engineers knew the soft clay seabed would compress under the weight of the massive seawall and runway, so they designed the airport's terminals on adjustable hydraulic jacks. But the rate of settling has vastly exceeded initial projections. Since construction began, the island has sunk more than 38 feet. Engineers are locked in a continuous multi-billion-dollar battle against the ocean, continually raising the seawalls and reinforcing the foundations to prevent this vital transportation hub from ultimately disappearing beneath the waves. Artificial islands are often born out of necessity, but Montreal's Île Notre Dame was born out of a unique combination of a massive transit project and a global celebration. In the lead-up to the 1967 International and Universal Exposition, Expo 67, the city needed a venue spectacular enough to host millions of visitors from around the world. At the exact same time, Montreal was undertaking the colossal task of excavating underground tunnels for its new metro transit system. City planners saw a brilliant opportunity for massive recycling. Over the course of just 10 months, engineers transported 15 million tons of rock and soil dug out from the subway tunnels and dumped it into the St. Lawrence River. This mountain of urban rubble was shaped and landscaped into Ile Notre Dame. Today, the island remains a vibrant public park and famously hosts the Formula One Canadian Grand Prix. Hey, speaking of weird geography, if you're a fan of all the nooks and crannies of the world, head to my geography community at thebit.co and join thousands of others as we dive deep into our fascinating planet. It's a one-of-a-kind place that needs a one-of-a-kind you. So, I'll see you there.
On the high-altitude waters of Lake Titicaca, straddling the border of Peru and Bolivia, lies a network of islands unlike any other on Earth. They're not made of rock, sand, or urban rubble. They're made of grass. The indigenous Uros people have lived on these floating artificial islands for centuries, originally building them as mobile defense against the aggressive Inca and Kola empires. The secret to their buoyancy is the native times Totora times reed, which grows abundantly in the lake's shallows. The roots are woven together to form a dense base, while countless layers of cut reeds are piled on top. Because the reeds at the bottom constantly rot away in the water, the Uros must painstakingly add fresh layers to the surface every few weeks. Amazingly, the white base of the Totora reed is also a dietary staple, meaning these islands are actually partially edible. When Denmark and Sweden agreed to build the Öresund link, an architectural marvel comprising a bridge and tunnel connecting the two countries, they needed a halfway point to transition traffic from above ground to below the sea. The result was Peberholm, a small artificial island built in the Danish Strait. But instead of paving it over with rest stops or gas stations, Danish scientists proposed a fascinating biological experiment. They decided to leave the island completely bare. No seeds were sown and no trees were planted. Peberholm was designated a strict nature reserve entirely off-limits to the public, to observe how nature colonizes a pristine, untouched piece of land. Over the past 2 decades, the wind and visiting birds have brought life to the island. Today, Peberholm boasts a thriving ecosystem, hosting hundreds of species of rare plants, insects, spiders, and nesting birds. The Maldives is globally renowned for its pristine white sand beaches, crystal-clear waters, and luxury overwater bungalows. However, the dark side of this massive tourism industry is an overwhelming accumulation of garbage. With no available landfill space on its tiny natural atolls, the Maldivian government came up with a radical, controversial solution in 1992. They decided to build a new island out of trash, located just a few miles from the capital city of Malé. Tilafushi began as a shallow coral reef lagoon. Over the years, countless tons of municipal and industrial waste have been dumped into the water, slowly filling the lagoon and capping it with construction debris to create solid ground. While it physically expanded the country's landmass, Rubbish Island presents a severe environmental hazard. Toxic smoke from burning trash and chemical runoff threaten the very marine ecosystems that make the Maldives so famous. Few artificial islands have wielded so much historic and political power as Dejima in Japan. Constructed in 1,636 inches, the Bay of Nagasaki, this tiny fan-shaped island was only about the size of a modern town square. The Tokugawa shogunate originally built it to segregate and confine Portuguese missionaries and control the spread of Christianity. However, after expelling the Portuguese entirely in 1639, the shogunate forcibly relocated the Dutch East India Company to the island in 1641. For the next 2 centuries, during Japan's strict isolation policy known as Times Sakoku, the Dutch were the only European entity permitted to remain heavily guarded and strictly confined to Dejima. Despite operating as an airtight quarantine zone, this tiny island became a vital conduit for the exchange of medicine, science, and military technology between Europe and a fiercely secluded Japan. By the late 1980s, Hong Kong's Kai Tak Airport, famous for its terrifyingly dangerous descent through high-rise apartments, was operating well beyond its capacity. The city urgently needed a massive new aviation hub, but available flatland in mountainous Hong Kong was virtually non-existent. The solution was the Airport Core program, one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in history. Engineers targeted Cheklap Kok, a small hilly island off the coast of Lantau Island. Through an unprecedented feat of terraforming, they completely flattened Cheklapkak and its smaller neighbor Lam Chau, using the excavated rock and millions of cubic meters of dredged sand to merge and expand them into one massive flat platform. The completion of the airport island in 1998 didn't just solve a transportation crisis. The immense scale of the reclamation actually increased the total land area of Hong Kong by nearly 1%. The Pearl Qatar is a staggering 4-square-kilometer artificial island situated off the coast of Doha's prestigious West Bay district. Lined with luxury villas, high-end retail, and yacht-filled marinas, it's a shining symbol of Qatar's modern wealth. However, the location and design of the island are deeply rooted in the nation's humble past. Before the mid-28th century discovery of vast oil and natural gas reserves, Qatar's economy relied heavily on the grueling and dangerous pearl diving industry. The Pearl Qatar was intentionally constructed over one of the region's most historically significant and prolific pearl diving beds. Furthermore, from an aerial view, the sprawling development is designed to resemble a string of pearls. It stands as a lavish, multi-billion-dollar monument, seamlessly blending the country's hyper-modern economic prosperity with a poignant homage to the generations of traditional pearl divers who originally built the nation. San Francisco's Treasure Island has lived a remarkably diverse number of lives since its creation in the late 1930s. Built primarily from mud and sand dredged from the bottom of San Francisco Bay, the island was specifically constructed to host the 1939 Golden Gate International Exposition, a massive World's Fair celebrating the completion of the city's two iconic bridges. Planners originally intended for the flat 400-acre island to serve as a commercial airport once the fair concluded. However, the outbreak of World War II rapidly changed those plans. The U.S. Navy requisitioned Treasure Island, transforming it into a critical naval station and embarkation point for the Pacific Fleet. The military base closed in 1997, leaving the island's fate temporarily uncertain. Rather than being abandoned, it is today undergoing a massive multi-billion-dollar redevelopment project, slowly transforming it into a sustainable residential neighborhood, offering some of the most spectacular skyline views in the entire Bay Area. In recent years, the concept of artificial islands has shifted from urban expansion to intense geopolitical conflict. Nowhere is this more evident than in the South China Sea, one of the world's most critical and heavily trafficked maritime shipping lanes. In a controversial bid to assert dominance and claim vast swaths of contested international waters, several nations, most aggressively China, have undertaken massive island-building campaigns, operating far from their mainland shores. Massive dredging fleets have pumped thousands of tons of sand and concrete onto fragile submerged coral reefs, transforming them into permanent landmasses. These newly minted islands aren't for civilian habitation. They have been heavily militarized, outfitted with deep water ports, radar installations, and long military airstrips. These artificial islands act as unsinkable aircraft carriers, fueling tense international diplomatic standoffs and raising severe alarm over the devastating ecological destruction of pristine coral ecosystems. While many artificial islands are built in the open ocean, India's largest man-made island was birthed from the depths of a lake. In the 1920s, visionary British port engineer Sir Robert Bristow recognized that the city of Kochi in Kerala had the potential to become a major global shipping hub. However, the waters of Embankad Lake were far too shallow to accommodate massive modern ocean freighters. The solution was an incredibly ambitious dredging project. Throughout the 1930s, engineers systematically deepened the lakebed to carve out a deep-water shipping channel. Instead of hauling the excavated mud and soil away, they strategically piled it up in the center of the lake to create Willingdon Island. Named after a former British viceroy, the sprawling island now houses the port of Kochi, extensive naval facilities, and large commercial centers, cementing its status as a vital economic engine for southern India. As the world grapples with climate change, Denmark pioneered a futuristic concept for artificial land, the world's first energy island. Moving beyond land reclamation for housing or airports, the Danish government planned to engineer a massive offshore hub in the brutal waters of the North Sea, dedicated entirely to renewable energy. This visionary project was designed to act as a centralized power plant, physically connecting and distributing electricity generated by hundreds of thousands of offshore wind turbines to power millions of European households. However, in mid-2023, the Danish government indefinitely paused the North Sea Energy Island project. The initial concept proved too financially risky, with estimated costs soaring past $7 billion US, making it far from profitable in its original form. While the ambition for massive offshore wind remains, this revolutionary shift in transnational renewable energy is currently on hold, while cheaper alternatives are explored. Humans are incredible at adapting to their environments, but we also happen to be pretty good at creating environments as well. The very idea of constructing an island is, in itself, a very weird aspect of geography. I hope you enjoyed learning all about human-made islands. If you did, be sure to check out this video all about Baja California. Thanks for watching. See you next time.